Broadcasting from the Symphony Studios in Marietta, Georgia, it's time for the Technology Harmony Podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. Tune in every week as we spotlight the very best minds in our industry. Now here are your hosts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Technology Harmony Podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. I am one of your hosts today, Katie Galley, and I, of course, am joined by my co-host, Trey Gaskins. How are you doing, Trey?
Katie, I'm doing great. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too. I noticed you have your orange, is it your orange Clemson shirt on today?
Well, we're excited down south that Clemson football's back in session, and it's hard to get a ticket, and through some very nice circumstances, I was fortunate enough to get some tickets this weekend. So I'm headed up to Clemson and can't wait.
Heck yeah, that's going to be fun.
Going again.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess, a rarity today to be able to go to a sporting event. So that's great. You get to go this weekend.
I know. We're excited.
Well, we are also excited, Trey. I know you're excited for Clemson football, but to interview our guest today in our Symphony studio. And today we have Executive Vice President of Multifamily Development with KETTLER, Pam Tyrrell. How are you doing, Pam?
Great. How are you today?
Hey, Pam.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your story with us today.
Sure.
So Pam, just to kick it off and get to know you a little bit, can you share with us a little bit about your professional journey and how you got the job you have today?
Sure. So I work at KETTLER. We're a private company, private full-service development company in the DC area. And I've been there probably 22 years now. I came out of UVA, had an economics degree, got a master's at Johns Hopkins in real estate. And I started out in consulting, went to underwriting at Freddie Mac, and have been at KETTLER ever since doing development. So for 20 years.
So how did you, from where you started, Pam, to making the transition to being Executive Vice President today of Multifamily, can you walk us through that whole process?
Sure. I mean, it's been 22 years and I have a hard time believing that because I feel like I'm still learning every day. I started out as a development associate, helping with loan closings and basically helping with whatever anybody on the development team needed. We had 4 developers at that time when I started in the late 90s. And then slowly but surely we started to get more and more projects. So they handed a few to me and said, go get these built. And I had to figure out how to do it. I handled all the financing and the oversight of the construction process. And then we've really seen a change. I've had a lot of variety in different product types, but we started out in affordable housing. And then we went to market rate housing, high-rise, condos, renovations. So I've really seen the whole gamut of multifamily, we'll call it. So a lot of different product types over the last 22 years, but I'm still learning.
And that's great. I mean, you just that's something you get to do every day then. That continual learning.
I know. I mean, that's the nice thing about development. You can never know everything. You know, there's just so much to learn all the time. Every project is different and has its own unique challenges. So
yeah. And so, Pam, what was it specifically about, getting kind of thrust into that world and learning about development? What is it specifically about that space that made you realize I do want to continue down this career path rather than maybe making a shift and trying something new?
Yeah, I'm a finance person. I always loved numbers, in my education and academic background, but I also had an affinity for design. I thought I wanted to be an architect initially when I went to college. And I took a couple of classes and quickly realized that maybe I wasn't as design oriented as I thought I might be. So I took a couple of architecture classes, enough to appreciate what it takes to be an architect. But then I was an econ major and took a lot of business courses. And I felt like that was more my wheelhouse, we'll call it. And so I just love the whole building process and the blend of finance and design. And I think that's what's kept me in it so long. And one of the main things about development, as you know, is project management. And I really kind of thrive on the process and driving the process and getting these developments built over a few year period. It takes a lot of tenacity and patience and coordination. So I love that part of it.
Yeah.
We see a lot of different projects ourselves, Pam, and it seems like one of the best skills is problem solving.
Yep.
And it's just like every day is a new day, and
yep.
There's another problem you got to solve.
Exactly.
The progress can keep on going.
Exactly.
Any being a technology company on our side, tell us about some of the technology problems that you've run into or that you see, and what are some of the ways to get ahead of that?
Yeah, I think honestly, the biggest challenge in technology is staying on top of all the trends and all the changes. And I think in development, at least doing a lot of projects in the DC area where the planning period to get to construction takes so long, and then the construction period takes so long. It's the challenge of designing in a technology that won't be obsolete by the time you build the project. And so that is just something that, has been a challenge, I'd say, since I've been, in the development world. It's just the technology piece is changing and evolving so rapidly. We just can't keep up, and I feel like the way we're trying to handle that now is working with good partners, companies like yourself or other companies where you can really not future-proof. I don't think you can ever really future-proof, but you can look ahead and see where the trends are going and try to incorporate some of those things into your buildings so that you are planning for that next technology innovation that's happening. So it's a balance because, some of those things cost a little extra money to be able to do that and get it into your buildings. But I think, you always have to be in development in general in terms of finishes and everything else. You got to look 2 to 3 years out and where is the market going to be in a few years and try and get that in, at the get-go. So,
right.
Challenge. And we always try to work on it and work with our partners to make sure we do our best.
Gotcha. Hey, what is the KETTLER philosophy on build and hold or build, like you were talking about, you have your finance background and return on investment. How do y'all look at your return on investment? Is long-term view, shorter-term views?
Yeah, as a whole, I say long-term. We're not what I would term, a merchant builder. We don't build and sell right away. We definitely are, fortunate enough to have really good partners that are aligned with us in that philosophy. So I'd say 7-year hold, 5 to 10-year hold at a minimum, longer if we can, but generally, we work with our equity partners to determine their time horizons, and they're probably more, 5 to 10-year window.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
But on some jobs where we don't have equity partners, Bob KETTLER, the owner of our company, is definitely a long-term hold philosophy.
And does that influence the technology that you're acquiring?
It does to a certain degree.
Really more integrated?
It does to a certain degree. I'd say what has a bigger impact is, and this is where it's a challenge, a lot of our partners don't want to be the first one, to try something new.
Right.
It's a big financial risk and investment to put in a new technology. And if you put it into 400 units or 150 units, that is a little risky. So I would say that we don't tend to be early adopters in a particular space. We're always watching it, but, it seems like right now in some of the, I'd say, smart home technology and streaming video and that sort of thing, it's been around enough that we're starting to put it into a few of our projects. So it needs to be more tried and true, let's say.
Right. What would be some examples of smart home things that you're doing now that you're feeling like it's worth the investment of making?
Yeah, so it is still expensive, but we're kind of approaching it more from an operational standpoint, what will work with our management company and what will benefit the management company. And then that also could be a benefit to our residents. So some of the things that we're looking at right now are integrated locks and thermostats, water sensors, that type of smart home technology that really can be used for the benefit of our management company, and trying to get those smart devices to sync with our management platform so we can do a better job with controlling vacant unit utilities and, access control to the front door, and watching if there's a water leak, trying to use things that are really going to benefit on the operating side, but also have the added benefit of being a great marketing tool. So, but that's really how we're trying to approach it, is what works best to make sure we operate the building efficiently. And then I think the marketing benefit is just a bonus. So that's how we're looking at it right now.
Great.
Do you find, Pam, so when you are looking at that then as side of management and then the resident experience too, are you more focused on the management side, or is it kind of trying to find solutions that will benefit both parties? Or is it just kind of, if you do one, it usually impacts the other in a positive way? I think it's that. I think it's what you said last. I think initially when we were studying this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were really looking at it as a marketing, opportunity, and how do we differentiate our project. And at that time, the cost of implementing the solution like that was so high, we couldn't make the return on investment work. And I think the only way that it starts to make sense is if you look on the operating expense side. And also a little hopeful revenue uptick on either rents or a technology fee or something like that to help offset the cost. I don't think it's going to, it's still not a typical return on investment, but I think for the right partners, implementing some of these smart home technologies, should hopefully help on the operating expense side, and maybe help even on lease up pace or additional rent or something like that for the residents, because their experience will be a little more integrated. But again, there's a lot of studies out there and we've read all of them, but until we see it for ourselves, it's sort of hypothetical until we actually see it in place. And so we are doing it, we are going in that path on one project right now up in Ashburn, Virginia. And we're hopeful that that building will deliver next year and we'll be able to see for ourselves, what that benefit is. So we're excited. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Pam, we've been going through a very interesting time with COVID and all the impacts it's making. How has that impacted your firm, and any shifts in ways of doing business as a result of it?
Yeah. So, well, obviously we've been all virtual. Our office has been closed since March, and we're going to be closed working virtually through the end of the year on the corporate side. Our management teams on site have done amazing. I mean, they've really had to adapt very quickly. And we manage about 20,000 units. So, I think the focus was really heavy on the on-site teams and making sure all our residents, had what they needed to, kind of mitigate the risks of COVID during the last 6 months. We did a very interesting focus group study internally with our management company, our development group, and asset management, and our market research department, where we did a multi-meeting evaluation of COVID impacts. And so we kind of classified a lot of ideas into 4 categories: some things that would be temporary, some more permanent shifts, hard to implement and easy to implement. And we've come up with a list of things that we are trying to integrate into our buildings now on the pre-development during our design. Some things we think are a permanent shift, like private exterior space, increasing balconies, patios, having a little bit more separation in some amenity spaces. Everything kind of went to big amenity spaces with little breakout areas. We're actually putting in private work pods or fitness rooms that are maybe a 1-person fitness room, different things like that to kind of address shifts that we think are a little more permanent. And within units, we're adding a few more den units than we would typically, because we think, working from home is, it might be a permanent shift. So people may want that additional space within their unit to have an office. So, and we didn't always think that 1 dens or 2 dens were that popular, but we think going forward, maybe having a few more of those type of units is going to be really beneficial and have a little more demand.
So Pam, how are you then with obviously no knowledge of the future and what could come, how are you guys discerning then what you think might be permanent shifts and what you think might not be lasting changes, and then moving forward with those?
Yeah, I mean, it is, as you said, it's very hard to predict the future. I think it's also hard not to overreact in the moment. I feel like there's always, with any economic impact, there's always this knee-jerk reaction, and you might, swing too far one way or another. And I think what we're trying to do is calibrate. So we did our focus group, I think it ended in June. We're going to do another one in December. I think a little more time has gone by, and we'll have that same group of people get together and say, okay, let's look at this. What do we now feel that the permanent changes are in our leasing offices, our unit mix, our outdoor space, our amenities, our package rooms, virtual leasing, all these different things that we were all talking about. And, that was 3 months into the pandemic. And so another 6 months will go by. And I think as things are slowly reopening, I think people would begin to sense, what areas do we think are more permanent shifts? I just, like, coffee service is one thing I keep hearing from the operating teams. We would design specifically to have coffee service in a lot of our buildings, but now we might be rethinking that, and it may be a permanent shift. People may not want to come and get communal coffee, in an amenity space. So, we're kind of looking at those sort of things and seeing, what do we want to put into our new buildings or the ones that are opening next year. We're actually reviewing on the fly 2 projects that are in construction and trying to make some modifications to them, because they will be in lease up when I don't think that COVID will be gone. We'll be opening next spring and summer, and we want to make sure that we're sensitive to, touchless faucets in the bathrooms and that sort of thing. So we are trying to make some shifts on our construction projects, but then look to the future to see what do we more infrastructure changes to, like, our leasing offices or amenities that we need to incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
So what, is there anything that keeps you up at night, or if you wake up in the middle of the night that you take a note on, it's like, man, this is something to pay attention to?
What keeps me up at night? Right now, so I didn't talk about the construction side of COVID impacts. That is something that is very out of our control a little bit. Fortunately, a number of our projects that were in construction, I think, have not suffered schedule delays, from manpower or materials significantly. One of our projects in Florida is having a little bit more material impacts just because of where it is in the process. Like the others had already done all their buyout. This one is starting to see a little bit of that. And so, from a work standpoint, keeping me up at night, just making sure all these projects deliver on time, on schedule, and, have a successful lease up. That definitely is important from a work standpoint. What keeps me up outside of that is, family issues, being a parent,
kids in college.
Yeah. But I try to, in this business, you cannot overreact to anything, because it just has a natural way of, everybody is a problem solver and very team oriented. So I feel like things tend to work out, if you have a really good team and, the right personalities on the project. Everyone is very solution oriented that we work with. And so that, kind of helps mitigate the problems when they come up.
Yeah.
So makes it a little easier when you have the right players involved.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
Well, Trey, do you have any other closing questions for Pam before we wrap?
Yeah, I'm always curious what keeps people up at night, and it's been
Schedule.
fun chatting with you. And you do have that calming personality that I could see or sense that if something crazy was going on, that there's a methodical solution. Let's just put our heads together to get it done. But as I got a couple of minutes back, problem solving seems to be one of the number one skills required for
I call it a laid back type A. You have to be really, really type A on every single detail, but you have to be laid back because there are going to be issues, problems, and again, that keeps you mentally engaged because hopefully you don't have the same problem over and over again,
Right.
So you're always learning, new techniques, new ways to address issues that come up. And like I said, having good partners and good team members, it's super helpful. Everyone has to be of the same mindset, to get projects done, especially the more complicated ones.
Right. That's why they say to hire slowly,
Yeah, we have a great team. We have 12 developer and construction people on my team. And so a lot of them have been with us a very long time, and we work really well together. So it's been super helpful, especially transitioning, to a fully virtual, environment. Just knowing and having confidence in your team is so critical, especially on jobs that are in flight. They got to keep going. You can't stop. So.
Would you have always considered yourself a laid back type A? Because that's very specific. I mean, being a type A, but also laid back.
I know. Well, no, I would say I was more type A to start, extremely detailed. And I think over time, as a parent and as you develop more and more projects, I think you realize that things happen and it's a little out of your control, but you just have to approach it with tackle it. Let's figure out a solution. And, you always seem to be able to work things out. And so I think that ends up making you a little more laid back when those crises or issues happen. But I really think it sort of sounds like a weird description, but I think it really on top of the problem solving that you mentioned, Trey, I think just being really, really detailed, but being able to see the big picture and the long view is very helpful, especially in development, because a lot of these projects take a very unique path. You never know. You have to get through zoning, you have to get through permits, design, construction, and then move it into lease up. So they have a very long life cycle, and you have to be very patient and do things as they arrive. As you know, you're giving me that look like you've seen this before. So, but yes, it's, I think a lot of people on my team have that similar kind of demeanor, we'll call it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's just something, you develop in your experience. Being in this industry, something you kind of
some of it's innate. Yeah, I think some of it is a little innate, but I think over time, and this is like any job, I think the more you do it, the more you've seen things happen, and then you have experience. I've been through a couple downturns, which were not pretty at the time, but you learn from that, and you realize there's always something brighter at the end. And I think COVID will be the same thing. This is definitely a major adjustment that we're all going through, but I think in the end, we're adaptable. We'll figure out, ways to do things differently. And honestly, I think situations like this breed innovation. And we're seeing a lot of that on the leasing side right now with virtual leasing and in our business with Zoom calls. And I feel like you're learning different ways of doing work, So you're learning new things. There'll be positives that come out of this, even though it's already been a very long 6 months.
Right.
Yes. But you're absolutely right. I love what you said. It's breeding innovation. Well, Pam, if somebody wanted to learn more about you, learn more about KETTLER, where might they do that?
They could go to our website, KETTLER.com, or email me, Tyrrell. Always interested in meeting new people and, seeing what's out there.
Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To learn more about our guest and their company, check out the show notes for the relevant links. If you would like to learn more about us here at Symphony, of course, subscribe to our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Symphony Technology Solutions and on Instagram at Symphony Tech Solutions. Here at Symphony, our ultimate goal is to make harmonious music out of all the technological noise. And we hope today's episode helped in doing just that. See you next time.